Hello dear students, welcome to the last theoretical session of electrochemistry. In this session, we will be discussing applications of electrochemistry that includes batteries and corrosion. Let us start off with the batteries. Can we imagine our life today without batteries? Actually, it looks very difficult. See, in a TV remote, we use dry cell. Imagine that TV remote had to be always connected through a plug to direct current. It is meaningless. You won't call it a remote after all. Then in quartz watches, we use mercury cell. Imagine there were no batteries. Do we even have quartz watches? No. Likewise, toys of the children, hearing aids for the people who can't hear, and then the automobile batteries. All these things function, automobiles, for all its electrical purposes, all these things function with the help of electricity supplied by batteries. And as I have already told you in the introduction, batteries are a series of galvanic cell. You remember very well that galvanic cell is a device in which a spontaneous redox reaction produces electricity. Now, a series of galvanic cells makes battery. However, if you remember the construction of Daniell cell that I have taught you, there was a half vessel on the left side in which electrode and the required solution will be kept, metallic plate and the required solution will be kept, and you call it an electrode called anode. There is a half vessel on the right side in which also there is a metallic plate and then solution required, and you call both the components as cathode. Both will be connected by a salt bridge and the metallic plates will be connected through a wire, and so on and so forth. Now that construction which you have learned there is temporarily prepared batteries that are used for electrical supply in the laboratories. Whereas they are galvanic cells. Whereas if you have to use a galvanic cell in a battery for day-to-day purposes of common living, then it needs to manage more qualities. It needs to be a little different from the kind of construction you have learned, because that construction you have learned takes a lot of space and it will be a little temporary because solution has to be changed regularly. All these things will be there. That is not possible. Whereas the batteries that we use in everyday life are supposed to be compact. They must be small enough so that they will fit into whatever the electrical appliances we are using them in. Then they must be easy to transport from one place to the other. Means we should not be worried about the breakages, we should not be worried about how to carry, how to pack it and all. So they must be easy to transport from one place to the other. Then they must be able to give consistent voltage for a long time. See, assuming the solution getting consumed and cell stopping to work immediately so that I'll have to pour the solution again. All these problems should not be there. And you can't expect a common man to, prepare some standard solutions and keep changing them. So, they must give constant voltage for a long time. And last but most important, for certain purposes, they must be rechargeable. Like the lead acid battery in automobiles, like the lithium ion battery in your mobile phones. All these things are rechargeable. After it is consumed for some time, the battery appears dead and then we connect it to direct current and it will be getting recharged again. Likewise, if possible, they must be rechargeable. Okay, these are the qualities which batteries must satisfy. Now, that's why their construction would be a little entirely different from what the conventional construction of galvanic cell that you have learned using Daniell cell as example. Okay. Now, what are the various types of batteries that are prescribed to be studied in our syllabus? Before telling that, I shall tell you there are two categories of batteries. One are primary cells, second are secondary cells. What is the difference? If for a definite amount of time the cell reaction, the spontaneous redox reaction happening in the cell is helping us get electricity, and after a definite point of time, maybe 3 months in few cases, 6 months in few cases, 1 year in few cases, like that, after a definite amount of consumption, the reaction is completely finished and the reactants are completely consumed and replaced by products, and the formed products cannot be reversed back to reactants by connecting to the direct current. See, there are two things. First, reaction should produce electricity. You call it electrochemical cell or galvanic cell. Next, if I supply electricity, the reaction should be conducted. Now, reaction giving electricity, the reaction will be spontaneous and its reverse will be non-spontaneous. You remember second law of thermodynamics where all the spontaneous processes are thermodynamically irreversible. That means if a given process is spontaneous in a given direction, the reverse of it will be non-spontaneous. So, reversing a cell reaction is non-spontaneous, and a non-spontaneous reaction should be achieved by passing electricity, then it is electrolytic cell. In case of primary cells, they cannot act as electrolytic cells because the reactions happening in them are not reversible. When I give example, you would understand. So the reactions happening in them are not reversible. Such cells which are not rechargeable are called primary cells. Whereas reactants get consumed into products, but the products are there as such available in the reaction, and by passing electric current, the products can be reversed back to reactants. That means the spontaneous redox reaction which is happening in forward direction to give us the electricity can be reversed in the backward direction, though it is non-spontaneous, by supplying the external agent called electricity, such that the reactants are formed back and start producing electricity again. So such cells are rechargeable cells and you call them secondary cells. So it is obvious in secondary cells, it is obvious that when you are getting electricity, it is working as electrochemical cell or galvanic cell. Whereas when you are supplying electricity trying to recharge it, then it is acting as electrolytic cell. It is performing the reverse reaction which is non-spontaneous. A non-spontaneous redox reaction performed by passing electricity, then you call the device as electrolytic cell. So a secondary cell acts as both electrochemical cell and electrolytic cell. Examples are very familiar to you. In primary cells, the dry cell, which otherwise is called Leclanché cell, is one that is prescribed to you. Second one is the mercury cell, the button cell that is used in quartz watches, hearing aids and all, that is prescribed in our syllabus. Then when it comes to secondary cells, Nicad cell, which for appearance looks like a dry cell only, but it is rechargeable cell. Then we have got lead acid battery, the one which is used in automobiles. So these are the 4 cells that are prescribed in your syllabus. Apart from that, there is one concept of fuel cells, about which I will give you introduction and explain you after I explain all these 4. So these are the 5 cells we are going to study as per our syllabus. Okay. See, when it comes to these cells, in case of entrance examinations, only reactions are important. In case of board examinations, for 3 of them, even diagrams should be practiced. Number 1, dry cell diagram should be practiced. Number 2, lead acid battery diagram should be practiced. And number 3, the fuel cell, which we are going to discuss at the end, the diagram should be practiced. for all these three in your EPL, diagrams are printed so flexibly that you can draw them, replicate them. It's not like a 3D diagram. It is simply printed like a 2D diagram only. You can practice them comfortably. I will more focus on the reactions part and tell you how to better remember the reactions by understanding the transition in oxidation states and all related to it. Okay, now when it comes to the dry cell or Leclanché cell that is used in regular electrical appliances, that works for 3 to 4 months. We use it in wall clocks, we use it in remotes and other toys and other places. Now dry cell, the anode is the zinc vessel. Try to take one battery, Eveready or Nippo or Duracell that you have at home. The whole content is placed in a vessel which is labeled, of course, for marketing purposes. That vessel is made up of zinc metal and that vessel itself acts as an anode. Then a graphite rod surrounded by manganese dioxide, a black colored substance called manganese dioxide. Here graphite rod provides the interface. You know graphite is a good conductor. So graphite rod just provides the interface. The substance which really undergoes reduction for cathode is manganese dioxide. So a graphite rod surrounded by manganese dioxide acts as a cathode for you. Now at the top of graphite rod there will be a brass cap. Now you take a dry cell, a battery at your home which may be present in your remotes or which may be present in your wall clock or whatever, and you observe there will be a flat side, there will be a cap, a button kind of thing on the other side. If you notice carefully, the flat side you will notice minus. The button cap side you will notice plus. Now you remember very well, we have studied in galvanic cells that in galvanic cell anode is a negatively charged electrode and cathode is a positively charged electrode, right? Now here what is happening? The vessel itself is acting as anode and then the graphite rod which is surrounded by manganese dioxide is acting as cathode. At the top of graphite rod they are putting that brass cap, button cap. That's why since cathode is positive, that button cap would be labeled as plus. Since anode is negative, the bottom side which is flat, the bottom of the vessel will be labeled as negative, minus, because that is anode. Then the electrolyte used in this case for the reaction to occur is a paste of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. The electrolyte used in this purpose is a paste of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. Now, how do the reactions happen? Please focus. See, try to remember dry cell as zinc manganese dioxide cell. See, that is where everything gets rushed into your mind. No doubt, these reactions need a repeated practice to be remembered. And these are such concepts which I would suggest you must practice before going to the examination, because there is every chance of confusing. But if confusion or lack of memory has to be minimized, then there is one way of using nomenclature in a better way. So whenever someone says dry cell, remember it as zinc manganese dioxide cell. Then automatically everything else comes into mind. Now, anode, the zinc vessel is acting as anode, right? It's a very simple reaction. At anode, what should happen? Oxidation. So zinc loses 2 electrons, becomes zinc cations, where charge of zinc is changing from 0 to +2. Increase in oxidation number is nothing but oxidation. Since the oxidation number is increased by 2 units, we are showing the loss of 2 electrons. Then I told you graphite rod is just providing the interface. It is the manganese dioxide which actually undergoes reduction as cathode. Now manganese dioxide in the presence of ammonium cations. Manganese dioxide in the presence of ammonium cations from the electrolyte turn into manganese hydroxy oxide. Manganese hydroxy oxide, and then ammonium salt turns into ammonia. You know the gas ammonia. So ammonium cation is a part of a salt called ammonium chloride that transforms into ammonia while reducing manganese dioxide to manganese hydroxy oxide. How do we call it reduction, and how many electrons does it involve? Let us check. See, in manganese dioxide, please observe, oxidation state is -2, as we know very well. -2 into 2 is -4. So to neutralize manganese must have +4. Now come here. Each oxygen is -2, -2 into 2 is -4. There is hydrogen oxidation state is +1. So -4 plus 1 is -3. To neutralize, manganese must have +3. So please observe, manganese is changing from +4 to +3, means there is decrease in oxidation state by 1 unit. Now you can observe there is no need for balancing also. Already the atoms are balanced. So to account for this decrease in 1 unit of oxidation state, I put 1 electron here. So reduction happens by gaining of 1 electron. Please observe, manganese dioxide has reduced itself into manganese hydroxy oxide in the presence of the electrolyte ammonium cation, which in turn transforms into ammonia, and the oxidation state decreased from +4 to +3. This decrease in oxidation state represents the reduction. Since it is by 1 unit, we are putting 1 electron in the reactant side. Now to get the net cell reaction, I need to add both the equations. To add both the equations, the number of electrons in both the halves should be same. But here you have 1 electron, while oxidation has 2 electrons. That's why you will have to multiply the reduction reaction by 2. So after multiplying the reduction reaction by 2, we have to add both. So I can write 2 manganese dioxide plus 1 mole of zinc plus 2 moles of ammonium cation gives rise to 2 moles of manganese hydroxy oxide plus 1 mole of zinc cations plus ammonia. This is the net cell reaction. See, net cell reaction need not be by hearted or memorized or whatever. Net cell reaction can be obtained if you know the 2 halves perfectly. You will add it and write the net cell reaction. So only thing mainly you have to remember is which is anode and which is cathode. And let me clearly tell you, as I have hinted you in the beginning itself, as soon as someone says dry cell, you should get to your mind zinc manganese dioxide cell. If you could understand that perfectly, then absolutely no problem. Okay. Now, 2 things we have to understand. One is why. You know very well it works for a maximum of 3 to 4 months. So it's very short-lived. Number 2, if you remember your wall clock, does it stop abruptly? No. Wall clock first slows down. Today it will be showing 9 o'clock at 9 o'clock. Tomorrow it will be showing 8 o'clock at 9 o'clock. Day after tomorrow it will be showing 7 o'clock at 9 o'clock. The next day it might be showing 6 o'clock at 9 o'clock. And then at some point it stays at 6 o'clock. Until you change the battery, it doesn't function anymore. That means please understand, this battery doesn't give consistent voltage. Though he would have labeled, if you check your battery, 1.5 volts, he would have labeled you. So, though it is marked 1.5 volts, until its entire life, until it's dead, it doesn't give consistently 1.5 volts. So, why it is so short-lived and why it doesn't give consistent voltage? And number 2, why it is not acting as secondary cell, why the cell reaction is not reversible? Let me answer the second question first. See, observe here, zinc cations and ammonia are formed as products. If products are remaining as such, and if the products can react with each other to form reactants, then the reaction can be reversible. But what happens? The zinc ions which are formed here and the ammonia which is formed, complex with each other, combine with each other to form a complex compound or coordination compound, about which you will learn in the chapter coordination compounds, to form a complex called diamine zinc complex. You call this complex as a diamine zinc complex. Because of formation of this diamine zinc complex, no more zinc ions and ammonia are available as such for products to react with each other to form reactants. That's why the reaction cannot be reversed, number one. Number two, why it does not give consistent voltage or why it dies quickly is, whether in use or not in use, the zinc vessel which is used as anode is being corroded by the ammonium chloride which is used as electrolyte. First of all, ammonium cation is required for reduction reaction to happen. But at the same time, it is corroding the zinc vessel and consuming the zinc vessel. As a result, the cell is getting discharged even when it is not in use. Because of which it is short-lived and it doesn't give consistent voltage. Okay, this is the concept of dry cell or Leclanche cell. Let us proceed to the second one. Moving on to mercury cell, or otherwise called as button cell. In the name itself you have mercury. You can understand where it is mercury, but whenever they say mercury cell, whenever you want to recollect the reactions of mercury cell, please remember it as zinc mercury cell only. Like you remember the dry cell as zinc manganese dioxide cell, mercury cell must be remembered as zinc mercury cell only. I'll explain you what are the components and what is the reaction. See, for anode here, zinc amalgam is taken. I have explained you in the previous concepts also. Amalgam is alloy of any metal with mercury. So small quantity of liquid mercury and large quantity of the metal will be mixed with each other to form an alloy, and you call it amalgam. And amalgamation with mercury increases the activity of the metal. That's why generally they prefer amalgamation. So here please understand, it is the zinc which chemically acts as anode, not mercury. Mercury is just to increase the activity of zinc, that's all. Clear? That's why I wanted you to remember it as zinc mercury cell. Then where is mercury functioning chemically? That is in cathode. Mercuric oxide. Here also there will be carbon, graphite will be, or carbon will be providing the interface, but the substance which is chemically undergoing reduction is mercuric oxide. That's why I wanted you to remember it as zinc mercury cell or zinc mercuric oxide cell. Better you try to remember it as zinc mercuric oxide cell. Now, the electrolyte used here is the aqueous solution of potassium hydroxide. The designing is very compact, very complex. Smaller it is, more complex it is to understand. Need not worry about diagram of mercury cell. Whereas dry cell, you need to practice the diagram and it is simple also. Whereas mercury cell, don't worry about the diagram, just focus on the reactions. So zinc amalgam is the anode where zinc will be undergoing oxidation. Mercuric oxide is the cathode, it will be undergoing reduction, and electrolyte is aqueous solution of potassium hydroxide. Clear? Now, let us understand the anode reaction. See, zinc in the presence of hydroxyl ions from the aqueous potassium hydroxide, in the presence of hydroxyl ions from the electrolyte, forms zinc oxide. Forms zinc oxide while forming water as the byproduct. Now, in order to balance it, I will have to put 2 here so that 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygens will be balanced. Then what about charge? This side you have 2 units of negative charge, that side you don't have any negative charge. Obviously, because it is an oxidation reaction and we have not shown any loss of electrons yet. Let us show it. In zinc, the oxidation state of metal will be 0 because it is in its elemental state. Whereas in zinc oxide, the oxidation state should be +2 because that of oxygen is -2. To neutralize, zinc must have +2. So oxidation state is increasing from 0 to +2. That means zinc should have lost 2 electrons. Now you can check both atoms and charges are balanced. One zinc atom on either side, 2 oxygens, 2 hydrogens and 2 units of negative charge. That is oxidation reaction occurring at anode. Now as I told you, amalgamation is just to increase the activity of zinc. It is only the zinc that participates in reaction. Then mercuric oxide in its aqueous solution, we have used aqueous solution of electrolyte. So in the water medium, mercuric oxide transforms into metallic mercury while forming hydroxyl ions as the byproduct. Mercuric oxide transforms into metallic mercury while forming hydroxyl ions as the byproduct. Now let us check how many electrons are involved in the reduction. In mercuric oxide, mercury will be in +2 state. As metallic mercury, mercury will be having 0 oxidation state. Now +2 to 0 means how many units reduced? 2 units. That's why I should put 2 electrons here. 2 electrons here. So oxidation is happening by 2 electrons, reduction also is happening by 2 electrons. Zinc metal is undergoing oxidation, mercuric oxide is undergoing reduction. The product of oxidation is zinc oxide, the product of reduction is metallic mercury. So simple. Metallic zinc became zinc oxide. Mercuric oxide became metallic mercury. Metal became oxide, oxide became metal. Reverse. See, this comparative study makes it easy for remembering. Clear? Now, another point to be noted. For oxidation, hydroxyl ions are providing the medium and byproduct is water. For reduction, water is providing the medium and byproduct is hydroxyl ions. Please make a comparative study. Now, to get the net cell reaction, I need not multiply any equation with any number because both sides we have 2 electrons only. Just add. Zinc plus mercuric oxide becomes mercury plus zinc oxide. Such an easy net cell reaction to remember. Hydroxyl ions, here I have not balanced hydroxyl ions, sorry. Hydroxyl ions got cancelled, water molecules got cancelled, electrons got cancelled. So you are left with zinc plus mercuric oxide giving rise to mercury plus zinc oxide. This gives an voltage of 1.25 volts and it does not have any problem of corrosion or any issues. That's why it gives consistent voltage. Means it stops means suddenly it stops working. It doesn't reduce the amount of voltage it produces over time and then stop later. Okay. So that is about mercury cell. As I have suggested you, remember it as zinc mercuric oxide cell. Remember the electrolyte and understand metal becomes oxide in oxidation, oxide becomes metal in reduction. And hydroxyl ions provide medium and water is the byproduct in oxidation. Water provides medium and hydroxyl ions are the byproduct in case of reduction. Clear? Let us move on to the secondary cells that we have. In the very title, there is clarity. NiCad cell means nickel cadmium cell. NiCad cell means nickel cadmium cell. Now, please understand, anode is metallic cadmium because cadmium is more electropositive, more reactive than nickel. That's why anode is metallic cadmium, whereas cathode is oxide of nickel called as nickel dioxide. Again, here also the interface for reaction is provided by graphite. Not to worry about the diagram or the arrangement. So, anode is metallic cadmium, cathode is nickel dioxide, and the electrolyte in this case also is aqueous solution of potassium hydroxide. Already in mercury cell, we had it as aqueous solution of potassium hydroxide. So, though it is nickel cadmium cell, I want you to, as soon as someone says NiCad cell, I want you to remember it as cadmium nickel dioxide cell. Again, repeatedly you do the comparative study. Okay? Dry cell. zinc manganese dioxide cell, mercury cell, zinc mercuric oxide cell, similarly nicad cell, cadmium nickel dioxide cell. Try to do such comparative study. In mercury cell, a paste of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride is the electrolyte, whereas in dry cell, paste of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride is the electrolyte, whereas in both mercury cell and nicad cell, the electrolyte is aqueous KOH. We are doing the comparative study. Now, what is anodic reaction here? It is simple and easy to understand. However, cadmium in the presence of hydroxyl ions, like in the case of mercury cell, please understand. There also, the metal in the presence of hydroxyl ions was undergoing oxidation. Here also, metal in the presence of hydroxyl medium from electrolyte is undergoing oxidation to become cadmium hydroxide. So to balance, I would need 2 moles of hydroxyl ions. Now, atoms are balanced, 1 cadmium atom and 2 moles of hydroxyl ions on both sides. What about charges? 2 units of negative charge this side. And you can understand, in metallic state, cadmium has 0 oxidation state, whereas in cadmium hydroxide, since hydroxyl ion is -1 and 2 hydroxyl ions are there, cadmium must have +2. So cadmium is changing from 0 oxidation state to +2 state, so that means it has lost 2 electrons. So oxidation is cadmium changing to cadmium hydroxide with loss of 2 electrons in hydroxyl ion medium. Then reduction at cathode. Nickel dioxide in the presence of water as medium. Again, compare with mercury cell. In mercury cell also, in anode, hydroxyl ions were the medium and water was formed as byproduct. In cathode, water was the medium. Similarly, here also, water is the medium. Then nickel dioxide transforms into nickel hydroxide in this case also. Nickel dioxide in water medium becomes nickel hydroxide, and like in mercury cell, water, the byproduct will be hydroxyl ions. So in order to balance it, I'll have to put 2 here and 2 here. Then you can check 1 nickel atom, 2 plus 2, 4 oxygens, 2 plus 2, 4 oxygens, 4 hydrogens, 2 plus 2, 4 hydrogens, and then you have got 2 units of negative charge here, so we need to get 2 units of negative charge here. For that, how do we justify the reduction? How many electrons are involved? See, since oxygen's oxidation state is -2 into 2 is -4, nickel in nickel dioxide has an oxidation state of +4. Whereas in nickel hydroxide, since hydroxyl ion is -1 into 2 -2, so nickel has +2. So it is changing from +4 oxidation state to +2 oxidation state. That means there is reduction by 2 electrons. So I must put 2 electrons here. So if you write the net reaction, hydroxyl ions get cancelled. Electrons get cancelled. So metallic cadmium plus nickel dioxide in the presence of water gives rise to cadmium hydroxide plus nickel hydroxide. If you make a comparative study, there also for oxidation, hydroxyl ions provide the medium. Here also for oxidation, hydroxyl ions provide the medium. There also for reduction, water provides the medium. Here also for reduction, water provides the medium. The difference is, there in the presence of hydroxyl ions in mercuric cell, the zinc metal is becoming oxide. That's why water is formed as a byproduct. Whereas here, cadmium is becoming hydroxide. So there is no water as byproduct formed here. And even there, the mercuric oxide became metallic mercury. Here, nickel dioxide became nickel hydroxide. Otherwise, water is the medium. So there and here, the medium provided for oxidation as well as reduction are same. make a comparative study so that you won't confuse from each other. That is my intention. Clear? So this is NiCad cell, and the formed cadmium hydroxide nickel hydroxide mixture is going nowhere, or not undergoing any kind of transformations. As a result, when you pass direct current, this reaction can be reversed. The cadmium hydroxide reduces to metallic cadmium and nickel hydroxide oxidizes to nickel dioxide. As a result, the reactants will be formed back and then cell starts working again. That's why NiCad cell is a secondary cell. Okay, let's move on to more important, lead acid battery. Let's go to lead acid battery. If you check any lead acid battery that is present in automobiles, on the top of it you can see plenty of red buttons. That is based on number of cells that are being used there. Each lead acid cell can produce 2 volts. So based on the requirements, say for example in 2-wheelers you need 6 volts, that's why they will be joining 3 cells together. Whereas in 4-wheelers you need 12 volts, that's why they will be joining 6 cells together. So lead acid battery gives voltage for a long time and it is rechargeable. Discharging and recharging will be happening simultaneously wherever we are using lead acid battery, be it in inverters at home or be it in automobiles. Now, the word acid is because the sulfuric acid is used as electrolyte in this case, and the word lead indicates the chemically the substance is used as lead here for both anode and cathode. How? Metallic lead grids, lead plates will be acting as anode here, whereas lead plates coated with lead dioxide. So please understand, the substance chemically functioning as cathode, the substance undergoing reduction is lead oxide here. It is being coated on the surface of lead plates, that's all. Okay. And the electrolyte in this case is sulfuric acid. Generally 48% sulfuric acid is used. Okay. So anode, cathode and electrolyte, we are clear. Now let us understand the reactions. Okay. Anode. See, metallic lead in the presence of sulfate ions from the sulfuric acid. Metallic lead in the presence of sulfate ions from sulfuric acid becomes lead sulfate. How do I account it as an oxidation reaction? Atoms are balanced but charges are not. How many electrons are lost here? Lead is changing from 0. Since sulfate ion is -2, lead must be having +2. So lead is changing from metallic state, that is 0 state, to +2 state. That means there is loss of 2 electrons here. So metallic lead becoming lead sulfate is the oxidation. Now, as cathode, see, lead dioxide is the substance undergoing reduction here. In the presence of H plus ions as well as sulfate ions, in the presence of H plus ions as well as sulfate ions coming from electrolyte, the lead dioxide becomes lead sulfate. The lead dioxide becomes lead sulfate. Of course, the byproduct in this case is going to be water. Now comes the question. Lead dioxide has become lead sulfate. Lead also has become lead sulfate. So the beauty of this device is both oxidation and reduction product is lead sulfide. Now, how many electrons are involved? Please observe. Lead dioxide, oxygen -2 into 2 -4. So to neutralize, lead in lead dioxide has +4, whereas lead in lead sulfate is +2. So from +4 to +2, there is reduction by 2 units. That's why I must put 2 electrons. And by the way, there must be balancing here. See, sulfate ions, 1 sulfate on each side, so no issues. one lead on each side, so no issues. There are 2 oxygens, there is only 1 oxygen, so put 2 here. Then 2 into 2, 4 hydrogens, so you put 4H plus here. Understood? So that way, you can check both charges and atoms will be balanced. In case of charges, for example, 2 negative charges on sulfate and 2 electrons, 2 negative charges, total 4 negative charges. 4 into plus 1, 4 positive charges. Net charge on the left side is 0. So net charge on the right side anyhow is 0. See, whenever you write redox equations, whether using electrons, you are writing as reduction half, oxidation half separately, or you are writing the total redox equation, the net charges on both sides must be balanced apart from atoms being equal. That we have accounted here. So the net cell reaction in this case is lead. Of course, the number of electrons on both sides are same, no issues. So lead plus lead dioxide plus, please observe, 4 H plus ions and 2 sulfate ions. If I add all of them, it will be nothing but 2 moles of sulfuric acid. 2 moles of sulfuric acid means 2 moles of sulfate ions and 4 moles of H plus ions. So 2 sulfuric acid gives rise to 2 moles of lead sulfate plus 2 moles of water. That is going to be the net cell reaction of lead acid battery. So metallic lead acts as anode, the lead dioxide acts as cathode, sulfuric acid is the electrolyte, metallic lead becomes lead sulfate, oxidation, lead dioxide becoming lead sulfate is reduction, because here 0 to plus 2, here plus 4 to plus 2. Okay, now the question is, how is this rechargeable? See, you know very well, if it is at our home, it will be connected to direct current at home such that when power is there, it will be getting recharged. When power is not there, it will be getting discharged. It will be supplying us the electricity. That's how lead acid battery works in inverters. In vehicles also, one side you are running the vehicle, one side you are using it for all your electrical requirements in the car, like roof lights or music player, whatever. Another side it is simultaneously getting recharged. I'll tell you how. See, few years back, after a lot of negotiation, after a lot of research and all, I purchased my first car, which was a used car actually. So with a lot of skepticism in mind, I purchased it with all the doubts about the dealer. And at third day, I think third day or fourth day, I go sit in the vehicle, put the key in the ignition and start. Not starting, even the panel was not showing any display. I was afraid. Did the dealer, because I was very new to cars, I did not know anything about them, and I was worried that did the dealer cheat me? Did he give me any wrong vehicle that it is not working suddenly within 2 days? Then I called up a road assistance. They came and they have shown me, see sir, you have forgotten the headlight switched on. New, and I was parking under some a street light, below street light. That's why I could not understand whether my headlights are switched off or switched on. So the headlights were kept switched on throughout the night and the entire battery was drained. That's why next day when I tried to start, not even starting, even the panel was not displaying. Then these guys kept, they brought some battery with them. So they kept jumpers and gave a quick start to the battery. And then they suggested me, sir, please roam in the city for 10 to 15 kilometers. Then your battery gets charged and it will be functioning no problem. Because I had put a new battery and I have drained it. So they said. So that day I had to put leave for the college and half day I had to roam with the vehicle around. Why roaming around with the vehicle could charge the battery which got completely drained? The answer for that is, when the vehicle is running, engine powers the alternator and alternator in turn charges the battery. So lead acid battery will be simultaneously getting discharged as well as recharged. Alternator will be recharging it and our usage will be discharging it. Okay, now How does it function during discharge and recharge? Let us understand. But before I go to that, please remember lead sulfate is the reduction oxidation product as well as reduction product. Means after the reaction is complete, after the battery reaches a dead stage, both anode and cathode will be having the deposits of lead sulfate. Okay. Now let us see how discharging and recharging happens. See, while I am discharging, means when the battery is being used, lead was the anode, lead dioxide was the cathode. Any load that you are putting here or any electrical appliance that you are using here, assume. So anode is negatively charged, cathode is positively charged. So oxidation is occurring here, reduction is occurring here. That's why electrons are flowing in this direction. Anode to cathode. Lead is losing electrons and those electrons are traveling across and reaching the cathode, and at cathode lead dioxide is gaining those electrons and undergoing reduction. So electrons are flowing in this direction. Now, once this reaction is completed and you have put it for recharging, or that is happening simultaneously, this side also you have lead sulfate, this side also you have lead sulfate. Previously oxidation was occurring here because the lead metal was losing electrons itself spontaneously. Reduction was occurring here because lead dioxide spontaneously was gaining the electrons coming from lead and undergoing reduction. Whereas now what do we do? Please observe. We connect this, which was previously acting as anode, to the positive terminal of the battery. That means this would act as, previously this was anode, this was cathode, right? Now, we are connecting this to negative terminal of the battery such that here this will act as cathode and undergo reduction because electrons will be entering into the solution through this. Okay. We will be connecting this to the positive terminal of the battery so that this will act as anode and oxidation occurs here. Means please understand, the charges of the electrodes remain same, but the processes happening will be reversed. Because here, as I have told you many times previously, here the reactions are deciding the charges. Here charges will decide the reactions, and I am connecting this one which was previously a negative electrode, I am connecting to the negative terminal of the battery. Here this was giving electrons, that's why it was negative terminal. Here because it is connected to negative terminal, the battery gives the electrons here, so that it takes that electrons and undergoes reduction. That means the electrons are entering into the, I will show this side. The electrons are entering into the solution, so electrons are flowing in this direction. And they will be leaving the electrolyte through anode later. That's a different story. Now here, lead sulfate will be gaining electrons. Okay, here it is in +2 state, right? Gains electrons and becomes neutral. Whereas here, in lead sulfate it is in +2 state, right? This becomes lead, whereas lead sulfate at this has to lose electrons. Already it is in +2 state, further losing electrons it becomes +4 state, that means it turns into lead dioxide. That's how, by reversing the flow of electrons, we are converting lead sulfate to lead here and lead sulfate to lead dioxide here, so that the reactants are regenerated and cell continues to function. Okay, that is how lead acid battery functions during its discharging as well as recharge. Okay, that is about lead acid battery. Let's move on to fuel cells. You know fuels very well. Any substance that burns to produce energy is called fuel. And the fuels with more calorific value are more efficient. The fuels with less calorific value are less efficient. All this we would have understood. Now you have plenty of fuels. and all of them undergo combustion. So in all of them, obviously, one of the reactants will be oxygen, air. Now I have a question. Write any combustion reaction that you know. Oxidation of methane, oxidation of benzene, oxidation of methanol. Write combustion reaction of any fuel. You can notice it would be a reduction reaction. It would be a redox reaction. So every combustion, fuel combustion is a redox reaction. Now, try to think of any device in which fuels generate electricity. You are absolutely correct. In common language, we call them generators. You have diesel generators, or you have generators that function on any other fuels. Now, what is the problem with those devices which we call them generators, where fuel combustion is resulting in production of electricity? The problem with them is their thermodynamic efficiency is very, very, very low. Generally, thermodynamic efficiency is expressed by the formula delta G by delta H. In thermodynamics, you must be remembering, free energy change is the energy that is put into useful work, whereas enthalpy change represents the total energy available with the system. Now, out of the total energy available with the system, how much of it is put really into work is called thermodynamic efficiency, denoted by eta. Now, in case of those conventional generators that you know, which perform combustion of fuels and produce electricity, you know very well plenty of smoke is being produced, plenty of heat is being generated, because of which most of the times their efficiency is less than 60% because there is a lot of dissipation. Problem number one. Problem number two, they are very huge, they occupy a lot of space, and in their case the fuel tank will be internal. So you have some serious program going on, or you have some function going on, or you have some serious experimentation going on for which uninterrupted supply is required, and the fuel tank is inbuilt. Once the fuel tank is empty, the diesel generator stops and you will have to fill the fuel again. There is no provision of fuel tank kept externally so that I will be continuously supplying the fuel so that the device functions uninterruptedly. No chance. So uninterrupted power supply is not possible. Lot of dissipation of energy in the form of heat and other unnecessary byproducts, and involves pollution also. To avoid all these things and to utilize the redox behavior of combustion of a fuel to produce electricity, because combustion is a spontaneous reaction and it is a redox reaction. A spontaneous redox reaction producing electricity is called galvanic cell. So instead of using combustion of fuel as a conventional generator, if we use it as a galvanic cell, then you call it a fuel cell. Methanol oxygen fuel cell could be there, ethanol oxygen fuel cell could be there. Likewise, you take any fuels. Now, the most popular fuel cell in the history of science, and that is required for your syllabus also, is hydrogen oxygen fuel cell, which is otherwise called Bacon cell, which was used in Apollo space mission. Now, the construction of this cell includes two graphite rods providing interface for both cathode and anode, and the inlets for uninterrupted supply of the gases, hydrogen as well as oxygen. And in the center, there will be a porous membrane containing the electrolyte. The diagram, a simple 2D diagram, is printed in your EPL. You can practice. I said I will focus on the reactions. So I repeat, two graphite rods to provide interface for the reaction of gases, whether it is reduction or oxidation, and the inlets for continuous supply of the fuels, hydrogen and oxygen, and a central membrane containing electrolyte as well as working as salt bridge. Okay. Now, which is acting as anode. Tell me, out of hydrogen and oxygen gases, which undergoes reduction, which undergoes oxidation? You are absolutely right. Being an electropositive gas, hydrogen undergoes oxidation, loses electrons. Being an electronegative gas, oxygen undergoes reduction, gains electrons. So, graphite rod at which hydrogen gas is passed acts as anode, while graphite rod at which oxygen gas is passed acts as cathode, and the electrolyte in this case also is aqueous potassium hydroxide, or even aqueous sodium hydroxide can be used. Now children, please remember, mercury cell, aqueous potassium hydroxide, nicad cell, aqueous potassium hydroxide, and a fuel cell, aqueous potassium hydroxide. Out of the 5 cells you have, 3 of them electrolyte is aqueous potassium hydroxide. Now you are left with only 2, dry cell and lead acid battery. And lead acid battery, the sulfuric acid usage is so famous, so there is no chance you can forget. So only case you have to carefully remember electrolyte is dry cell, ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. Because the subject is a little dry, you need to memorize the substances for the reactions to happen. Reactions do have a logic in terms of increase or decrease in oxidation state. But since substances have to be memorized, it is only electrolyte which you may often confuse. I am telling you how to easily remember it. Okay? Now, electrolyte is aqueous potassium hydroxide. Now, how reactions occur? See, at anode, hydrogen gas, please observe, in the presence of hydroxyl ion medium from the electrolyte, undergoes oxidation and forms water. Now, how do you say it has undergone oxidation? First, let me balance the atoms. See, 3 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. So, in order to make it even, I should put 2 here so that it becomes 4 hydrogens. So, I can put 2 here so that 2 to 4 hydrogens and 2 oxygens. Atoms are balanced. Now, how do I justify that it is oxidation? Here hydrogen is in its +1 state, but here the hydrogen is in its 0 state. Now from 0 state, in water the hydrogen would have changed to +1 state. Now observe, hydrogen changing from 0 oxidation state to +1 oxidation state, that is increase in oxidation state, represents the oxidation. Then how many electrons? Observe. There are 4 hydrogens on the reactant side, out of which 2 of them from hydroxyl ion changing from +1 to +1, no change. Whereas only 2 hydrogen atoms from hydrogen gas are changing from 0 to +1, so it involves only 2 electrons. When it comes to cathode, oxygen in the presence of water as medium producing hydroxyl ions represents the reduction. Now, in order to balance, I'll have to put 2 here so that the number of oxygens becomes 4 totally, and I can put 4 here so that number of hydrogens have become 4 on both sides. Now comes the question, number of electrons involved in reduction, that will balance the equation also in terms of charges. Now, oxygen changing from, here oxygen is in -2 state only. Whereas here oxygen is changing from 0 to -2. So please understand, out of the 4 oxygens involved in the reactant side, 2 of them are changing from 0 to -2, whereas 2 of them are remaining -2 both sides. So 2 oxygen atoms changing from 0 to -2, so each oxygen losing 2 electrons, so totally there is 4 electrons. So 4 units of negative charge, 4 units of negative charge on both sides. Now, in order to take the net cell reaction, you will have to multiply the cathodic reaction by 2. You will have to multiply the cathodic reaction by 2. So observe, I will write the whole reaction and then cancel the common species. So 2H2 plus O2 plus 2 into 2, 4OH minus plus 2H2O giving rise to 2 into 2, 4H2O plus 4OH minus plus 4 electrons. This side also there were 4 electrons. Please observe. So, since the equation at anode is multiplied with 2, 2H2 you had, but only 1 O2, then 2 into 2, 4 OH minus 2 H2O from reduction reaction, then 4 electrons from reduction reaction, then on the reactant product side, 2 into 2, 4 H2O, 4 OH minus in the reduction reaction, then 2 into 2, 4 electrons in the oxidation reaction. Now let us cancel the common species. 4 electrons each get cancelled, 4 OH minus each get cancelled, and you have 2 moles of water and 4 moles of water this side, so you will be left with 2 moles of water. So the final reaction will be 2H2 plus O2 giving rise to 2H2O. So nothing but combination of hydrogen gas and oxygen gas to produce water. It is of course a redox reaction, and hydrogen is undergoing combustion in the presence of oxygen to produce water. So combustion reaction of hydrogen, which is a spontaneous redox reaction, instead of using burning and performing thermochemically, we are connecting them as electrodes and performing electrochemically. In a thermochemical reaction, you have plenty of smoke and plenty of heat produced, which dissipates the energy, so efficiency will be less. Whereas in electrochemical reaction, thermodynamic efficiency will be very high. In case of diesel engines and all, less than 60% thermodynamic efficiency you find, whereas here thermodynamic efficiency will be as good as 85%. Advantage number 1. Advantage number 2, since the fuels are fed from outside, the cell just contains the inlets for fuels to be fed, you can keep feeding the fuels with cell functioning indefinitely. See, for example, it is used in Apollo space mission, I told you. So uninterrupted power supply is required, so they keep feeding the fuel from outside so that cell need not stop even for a second functioning. And one interesting aspect to be noted, the byproduct here is water. The scientists in Apollo space mission used to add minerals to this water, which was formed as a byproduct, and they used to use it for drinking purposes also. So the devices in which a combustion reaction of a fuel performed as an electrochemical redox reaction to produce electricity in a more efficient manner are called fuel cells. The classic example we had was hydrogen oxygen fuel cell. Clear? That is about batteries. Totally 5 batteries prescribed in your syllabus. As I told you, among them dry cell, lead acid battery and fuel cell. For these 3 you have to practice diagrams. A simple 2D diagram available in your EPL. Whereas for the rest 2 of them you need not practice diagrams, they are a little complicated. Is that clear? But reactions you have to practice for all of them, and as during my teaching as I went on saying, even here you observe. Like in mercury cell and nicad cell, where in both of them the electrolyte is KOH. So wherever electrolyte is KOH, please observe, hydroxyl ions provide medium for oxidation and water is the byproduct. Water provides the medium for oxidation and hydroxyl ions are the byproduct. Same is true both for mercury cell and fuel cell. Whereas in nicad cell also, hydroxyl ions provide medium for oxidation, water provides medium for reduction. Only thing is, in oxidation, you don't have water as the byproduct. Only cadmium hydroxide is found. Likewise, you make the comparative studies so that you will not confuse. So what you do after learning all of them? You need them. You need them for both boards as well as entrances. Very desperately, questions are guaranteed. That's why, do not ignore. Make a chart kind of thing. Put all the cathodes side by side, all the anodes side by side, all the reduction halves side by side, all the oxidation halves side by side, all the net cell reactions side by side. And practice them together after you practice them individually. Okay, that's how you can remember better. Now let us go to the second application, corrosion. I know you have studied corrosion in your school. corrosion is most common with metals. What happens, especially on the surface, the metal gets eaten up sometimes. Slow eating up of the metal, due to its electropositive character, the metal reacting with substances available around it and turning into some compounds such that its metallic nature is lost. Such slow eating up of metal due to its electropositive character, due to its exposure to atmosphere, due to its reaction with atmospheric substances, such that it transforms into some compound, is called corrosion. We know it. As soon as I say corrosion, the classic example comes to anybody's mind is rusting of iron. Apart from that, silver gets tarnished with black color due to formation of silver oxide. Copper gets corroded with green color due to formation of copper carbonate because of its reaction with carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Sodium, its corrosion happens just like that. Sodium metal is not common in our day-to-day life, but you must be knowing in laboratory. It is stored carefully in kerosene or glycerin. It is a grayish white shining soft metal. Bring it out of kerosene or glycerin, don't even wait for more than 10 seconds. You can see the bright grayish white color turning into black because of its reaction with atmospheric oxygen to become sodium oxide. Likewise, many metals react with atmospheric substances and turn into some compounds. Such phenomenon is called corrosion. Why does corrosion happen? Exposure to atmosphere, prolonged storage of moisture or water at their surface, provision of bends or strains in the metallic devices. Say, for example, you must have seen there used to be some pipe locks coming for vehicles to lock their helmets. Yes or no? Now, if you notice the lock part of it, you can clearly see the gaps which are present will be getting corroded very quickly, whereas the plain surface doesn't corrode so quickly. So the open surface doesn't corrode so quickly. The gaps will be corroding so quickly. Why? Wherever there are bends or gaps or strains in the metal surface, there the moisture is stored for a long time. So prolonged exposure to moisture easily causes corrosion. Now comes the question, why are we discussing corrosion in electrochemistry? The answer is simple. The reason for the metals spontaneously getting corroded over time is explained using an electrochemical phenomenon, number one. And number two, the remedies, some of the very interesting remedies for corrosion also come from electrochemical phenomenon. Or by understanding the electrochemical theory of corrosion, we are able to get the remedies easily. That's why corrosion is being discussed here. Now, the electrochemical phenomenon behind occurring of corrosion is explained in our syllabus using rusting of iron. Let us understand that. So, electrochemical theory of rusting. Please observe, the bulk of iron, the inside of iron behaves as anode here, and the surface iron which is in contact with atmospheric air and moisture behaves as a cathode here. What exactly happens? So here please understand, as soon as surface iron comes in contact with air or moisture, an electrochemical redox couple is set up. The surface starts acting as cathode and the bulk of iron starts acting as anode. So the redox couple is set up. Now what happens? as soon as the surface comes in contact with air or moisture, there will be some chemical reactions happening there which will be craving for electrons. I'll tell you which ones are they. Those electrons will be supplied from bulk of our iron, which loses 2 electrons and becomes ferrous ions, for which the electrode potential, as you have already studied, is 0.44 volts SRP value. This is anodic reaction. Now observe. What is happening at cathode? See, carbon dioxide from atmospheric air combining with water present in the moisture and producing carbonic acid. You know very well carbonic acid is a weak acid. It ionizes reversibly to form H plus ions and bicarbonate ions. Now, the formed H plus ions provide a medium for atmospheric oxygen to undergo reduction on the surface of iron. Please observe it. Atmospheric oxygen undergoes reduction on the surface of iron in the medium of acidic medium of H plus ions produced by carbonic acid, such that atmospheric oxygen reduces to form water. How many electrons involved? Let us check that first by balancing the atoms. 2 oxygen atoms, so let me put 2 here. Now, 4 hydrogen, so let me put 4H plus here. Now, each oxygen from 0 state, it is changing to -2 state, and there are 2 oxygens on both sides, 0 to -2. That means 2 electrons gained. 0 to -2. To get 2 units of negative charge, it needs to get 2 electrons. Each oxygen gaining 2 electrons, so 2 oxygens together gaining 4 electrons. Now, please observe, we are familiar with this reaction. It is there in our electrochemical series also, and we have discussed it 3-4 times. Where? Whenever I was talking about electrolysis process in which water intervenes in the reaction and water undergoes oxidation, please go back and check. Reverse of this reaction only we would have put there. Water undergoing oxidation to form oxygen and forming H plus as byproducts with loss of 4 electrons by 2 moles of water. And every time when we were writing that, and when I was trying to ask you to get the electrode potential for that, I asked you to check the electrochemical series for the reverse of oxidation. Now that reverse of oxidation is nothing but reduction. Water oxidation is nothing but reduction of oxygen, which is forward reaction. You will find this reaction as such in your electrochemical series. Go and check for which electrode potential they would have mentioned it as 1.23 volts. 1.23 volts. Now, this is anodic reaction, this is cathodic reaction. Add both of them to get the net cell reaction. To add them, anode you have only 2 electrons, cathode you have 4 electrons, so you will have to multiply the anodic reaction by 2. So, 2Fe plus O2 plus 4H plus 4 electrons will get cancelled, of course, giving rise to 2Fe2 plus 2H2O. This would be the net cell reaction for which E0 cell can be calculated as E0 cathode minus E0 anode, right? So 1.23 minus of minus becomes plus 0.44. 1.23 plus 0.44, because minus of minus becomes plus. So you get a cell potential of 1.67 volts. So the cell potential for the redox reaction that is happening while rusting is happening is 1.67 volts. Fine, we got the net cell reaction, but where is rust? Let me explain that. See, the ferrous ions formed in this net cell reaction which you are seeing here, in the presence of water medium, undergo atmospheric oxidation. In the presence of water medium, undergo atmospheric oxidation to form ferric oxide, byproduct being H plus. To form ferric oxide, and the byproduct of this reaction is H plus. See, observe. From +2 state, already it has changed from ferrous, iron to ferrous here. Oxidized from iron to ferrous. Further from ferrous, it oxidizes to ferric. So, from +2 state, it would have changed to +3 state. That is oxidation here. So, I'll come back to balancing of this equation. But let me quickly finish off the task for you. Ferrous ions in water medium are oxidized by atmospheric oxygen to form ferric oxide. The formed ferric oxide absorbs moisture from atmosphere. Here X means variable. So absorbs moisture from atmosphere and becomes hydrated ferric oxide. Means it can absorb any number of moles, that is the meaning. Now this hydrated ferric oxide is the brown colored compound which we call it as rust. Now let me quickly come back to the balancing of this equation. Please observe. See, ferrous 1 iron, so I can put 2 here if needed, and then 2 plus 1 3 oxygens already balanced, so here 2 hydrogens, so I can put 2 here. That way atoms look balanced. But what about charges? 2 into plus 2 plus 4, but 2 into plus 1 plus 2, the charges are not balanced. That means it needs a little more balancing because charges are not balanced here. So I may have to make the oxygens even, put 2 here. Then what happens? 4 irons will come. So 4 Fe2 plus 3 into 2, 6 oxygens, whereas you have only 2 plus 1, 3 oxygens here. So I can put 3 into 2, 6 oxygens, right? So you need 4 more oxygens. I can put 4 here. 4 into 2, 8. So I can put 8 H plus here. That way you can check 4 into 2, 8 plus 8 units of positive charge. Here also 8 units of positive charge. The reaction is balanced. That's for your understanding and clarity. If you wish to actually divide the whole equation by 2, that is fine. But then you will get half mole of oxygen. Fine, allowed as long as we are thinking thermodynamically, as long as coefficients are considered as moles, fractional coefficients are allowed. Since I did not want fractional coefficients to be used, I have balanced like this. Okay, so this is how rusting happens, and this is how rusting is explained using electrochemical phenomena. Now, how can we avoid rusting? Number 1, barrier protection. We do painting, we do cover with oil, we do cover with grease and all to avoid the rusting. Number 2, more important, is sacrificial protection. You have learnt it in your school. Dip the iron article in molten zinc, and then molten zinc so on the surface forms zinc carbonate, and zinc carbonate layer protects the iron from rusting. What we need to understand at this stage actually is cathodic protection. See, as per the electrochemical theory which you understood now, iron was actually acting as anode. If I can convert iron into cathode, it will not undergo oxidation, then I can save it. And how do I do it? Connect iron vessel with any more electropositive metal block like that of magnesium. Then what happens? Magnesium loses electrons instead of iron, so magnesium acts as anode, sacrifices itself to undergo oxidation so that this will be protected. So with this, the electrochemistry is finished. Thanks for following my lessons.